The signal came on a quiet Tuesday morning, though nobody on Earth agreed on what a morning meant anymore. Humanity had spread across 3 systems by then, with small colonies on Mars, on the moons of Jupiter, and on a new world called Haven, far past the old solar borders. Life was calm. People worked, ate, slept, and looked at the stars without much fear. That calm ended the moment the signal reached Earth's deep space array. It was not a friendly signal. It was a warning. The message came from a race calling itself the Skarn Dominion. Their words were translated by Earth's linguistic computers within minutes, but the meaning did not need much translation. The message was short and cold. It said that humanity had expanded into space claimed by the Dominion. It said that Earth's colony on Haven sat inside land that belonged to them. It said humanity had 30 days to send a delegation to a neutral station called the Veil, or the Dominion fleet would come and take what it wanted by force. Earth's leaders gathered within hours. The United Earth Council met in an underground chamber below Geneva, a room built decades ago for exactly this kind of moment, though nobody ever believed it would be used. 12 council members sat around a long table. General Marcus Hale, head of the Earth Defense Fleet, stood at the front with a star map glowing behind him. "The Skarn Dominion is old," Hale said. "Our probes picked up traces of their ships years ago, but we never made contact. Now we know why. They don't make contact, they make threats." One council member, a thin woman named Director Amara Chen, leaned forward. "What do we know about their fleet size?" "Enough to worry," Hale said. "Long-range scans suggest hundreds of warships in their home system alone. We don't know their full numbers. We do know they've expanded through at least a dozen other systems, likely by force." The room went quiet. Humanity had built a fleet over the last 20 years, mostly for defense and mining protection. It was strong by old Earth standards, but nobody in that room believed it could face down a fleet of hundreds of alien warships. "So what happens if we ignore the message?" asked another council member. "They come and take Haven," Hale said, "and likely more after that. And if we send a fleet to the Veil to show strength..." Hale shook his head. "If we send our whole fleet, and they don't like what they see, we lose everything in one battle. We'd have nothing left to defend Earth itself." The room fell into arguing voices. Some wanted a full show of force. Some wanted to send unarmed diplomats and hope for peace. Others wanted to ignore the threat and prepare defenses at home instead. It went on for hours, with nobody agreeing on anything solid. It was Director Chen who finally spoke the idea that changed everything. "Send one ship," she said. The room went silent again, but this time from confusion rather than anger. "One ship?" Hale repeated. "Director, with respect, that's suicide. A single ship against their fleet, they'll destroy it before it even reaches the meeting point." "Maybe," Chen said. "Or maybe it tells them something 100 ships never could. If we send a whole fleet, it looks like we are afraid, and it looks like we are trying to match their numbers, which we cannot do. If we send nothing, we look weak. But if we send one ship, alone, to meet a fleet of hundreds, it says something different. It says we are not afraid of them. It says we believe one ship is enough." "That's a gamble with human lives," Hale said quietly. "Everything right now is a gamble," Chen answered. "At least this way, we control the message we send." The council debated the idea for 2 more days. In the end, it was General Hale himself who suggested which ship to send. Not the newest ship in the fleet, but the one nobody outside a small circle of scientists and officers fully understood. The UNS Requiem. The Requiem was different from every other ship humanity had built. It had been designed over 12 years as an experimental project, meant to test new defense systems that most of the fleet did not yet have. Its hull was covered in a layered shield system nicknamed Aegis, built to absorb and redirect enemy fire instead of simply blocking it. Its weapons were not made for wide destruction, but for precision, able to disable an enemy ship's engines, or weapons, without destroying the whole vessel. It also carried something few people knew about: a small fleet of automated drone ships hidden inside its hull, ready to deploy if needed. The Requiem had never seen real combat. It had only been tested in simulations and a few controlled trials near Mars. Sending it alone into a fleet of hundreds of unknown alien warships was either the smartest decision Earth could make, or the most foolish one. Nobody could say for certain which. Captain Ava Rhodes was given command of the mission. She was 42 years old, calm by nature, and known across the fleet for staying steady, even when things went wrong. She had led rescue missions during the Mars mining collapse 8 years earlier, saving over 300 lives when a station's life support failed. She had never lost a crew member under her command. When General Hale offered her the mission, she did not hesitate. "You understand what we're asking," Hale said to her in his office the night before the announcement. "You'll be flying into a fleet that could be 100 times your size. If this goes wrong, there may be no way for us to help you." "I understand," Rhodes said. "Why are you willing to do this?" Rhodes thought for a moment before answering. "Because somebody has to show them who we are, before they decide who we are for us." Hale nodded slowly. He had no answer better than that. Word spread through the fleet quickly once the mission was confirmed. Some officers thought it was madness. Others believed it was the boldest move Earth had made since first reaching for the stars. The crew of the Requiem, 312 men and women, were given the choice to step down if they wished. Not one person left the ship. Among the crew was Lieutenant Commander Daniel Osei, the ship's second in command, a sharp-minded officer known for his careful planning. There was also Dr. Ren Takahashi, the ship's chief science officer, who had helped design the Aegis shield system herself and understood its abilities better than anyone alive. And there was young Ensign Priya Malhotra, only 23 years old, serving as a weapons systems operator, nervous but determined to prove herself. 3 days before departure, Captain Rhodes gathered her full crew in the ship's main hangar bay. She stood on a raised platform so everyone could see her. "Some of you have asked me why we are doing this," she said, her voice carrying through the quiet hangar. "Why one ship? Why us? I'll tell you what I told General Hale. We are not going to the Veil to fight a war. We are going to answer a threat with something the Dominion has never seen before. A species that does not panic, does not grovel, and does not send 100 ships to prove a point that one ship can prove better." She paused, looking over the rows of crew members standing before her. "We are not reckless. We are not blind to the danger. But we believe in this ship, and we believe in each other. If the Dominion wants to test humanity, then we will be the test they remember." The hangar erupted in quiet, steady applause. Not loud cheering, but something deeper, a shared resolve among people who understood exactly what they were walking into. On the morning of departure, the Requiem left Earth's orbital dock at dawn. Thousands watched from the ground and from orbital platforms as the ship's engines lit up, turning night into a soft blue glow across the sky. News networks across Earth and its colonies broadcast the launch live. For many people, it was the first time the full weight of the crisis became real. One ship, carrying the hopes of an entire species, was flying alone into the unknown. Inside the ship's bridge, Captain Rhodes watched Earth shrink behind them on the main view screen. Commander Osei stood beside her, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the star charts ahead. 30 days to the Veil," he said, "assuming no delays." "Then we make sure there are none," Rhodes replied. Dr. Takahashi walked onto the bridge, tablet in hand, reviewing the latest readings from the Aegis shield array. "Shields are at full capacity, Captain. Everything is exactly where we want it." "Good," Rhodes said, "because from here on, we don't get to make mistakes." The ship moved deeper into open space, leaving the last signs of human territory behind. Ahead lay 30 days of travel through mostly unknown space, toward a meeting point controlled by a fleet larger than anything humanity had ever built. Nobody on board knew exactly what waited for them at the Veil, but every person aboard the Requiem understood one thing clearly. They were not just flying to a negotiation, they were flying to define what humanity would become in the eyes of the galaxy, and there would be no turning back once the Skarn Dominion's fleet came into view. Far ahead, in a system humans had never seen, the Dominion was already preparing. Word had reached their command that the humans had accepted the meeting. What the Dominion did not yet know was how humanity planned to respond. They expected a fleet, they expected fear, they expected a species desperate to please a stronger power. They had no idea that Earth was sending only one ship, and they had even less idea of what that one ship was capable of. The 30 days ahead would decide everything, and somewhere in the dark between the stars, the UNS Requiem carried a message the Skarn Dominion never expected to receive. The first 10 days of the journey passed quietly. The UNS Requiem moved through empty space at steady speed, its crew settling into the routine of long-distance travel. Captain Ava Rhodes kept the ship on a strict schedule, believing that discipline would keep the crew's minds sharp for what waited ahead. Drills were run every day. Weapon systems were tested and retested. Dr. Ren Takahashi spent most of her hours in the science lab, running simulations of the Aegis shield system against different kinds of enemy weapons, trying to predict every possible danger before it appeared. On the 11th day, the ship's sensors picked up something unexpected. A small, unmanned probe, likely belonging to the Skarn Dominion, was following at a distance, keeping just far enough away to avoid detection by normal scans. "They're watching us," said Commander Daniel Ose, staring at the sensor readout. "Let them watch," Rhodes said. "Let them see exactly what we are. No tricks, no hiding." She gave the order to continue at normal speed, making no attempt to shake off the probe. If the Dominion wanted information, she would rather they see the truth than guess at something worse. Word of the watching probe spread through the ship quickly, and for the first time since launch, a quiet tension crept into the crew's daily routine. Young Ensign Priya Malhotra, working her shift at the weapons station, found herself checking the same readings over and over, though nothing had changed. "You all right?" asked the officer next to her, a young man named Corporal Ruiz. "Just thinking," Priya said, "about what they're seeing, about what they think when they look at us." "Probably think we're small," Ruiz said with a small smile. "Until they find out different." Priya smiled back, though her hands stayed steady on the console. She had trained for years for a moment like this, and now that it was here, the weight of it felt different than she expected. Not exactly fear. Something closer to focus. Deep within Dominion space, far ahead of the Requiem's path, the mood was very different. The Dominion fleet had gathered at the Veil, a massive space station built centuries ago at the crossing point of several old trade routes. Over 400 warships had assembled there, under the command of Fleet Marshal Draeth Korin, a large, heavily built alien, with gray skin and deep-set eyes that missed nothing. Korin had spent 30 years conquering weaker species along the edges of Dominion space, and he expected this meeting to be no different. Above him, in the command tower of the Veil Station, sat Grand Speaker Cathal, the political leader overseeing this encounter. Cathal was smaller than Korin, with a sharp, calculating mind more suited to politics than war. It was Cathal who had sent the original warning message to Earth, and it was Cathal who would lead the formal negotiation. "The human delegation departs their homeworld today," reported an aide, reading from a data screen. "Our tracking probe confirms departure." "How many ships?" Cathal asked. The aide paused, checking the readout twice before answering. "One, Grand Speaker." The command tower went quiet. Fleet Marshal Korin let out a low, rumbling laugh. "One ship," Korin repeated. "They send one ship to answer a fleet of 400? Either this species does not understand what fear should feel like, or they have already given up." "Or it's an insult," said another commander, a sharp-voiced female officer named Vessa Threll. "A single ship. They think so little of us that they send nothing more than a token gesture." Cathal said nothing at first, studying the data on the screen. Something about the report bothered him, though he could not say exactly what. In his centuries of overseeing Dominion expansion, he had seen many species respond to the Dominion's demands. Some groveled immediately. Some sent their full fleets in desperate shows of strength that always ended the same way, in defeat. He had never seen a species send exactly one ship, alone, into the heart of Dominion territory. "Track its course carefully," Cathal finally said. "I want full sensor readings the moment it enters range. I want to know everything about this ship before it arrives." "You think one ship is a threat?" Korin asked, still amused. "I think," Cathal said slowly, "that a species confident enough to send one ship into the jaws of an enemy fleet either knows something we do not, or does not understand the danger they are in. I would like to know which before we act." Korin waved a hand dismissively. "Whichever it is, our fleet will be ready. If they wish to test us, we will not disappoint them." Over the following days, Dominion scouts tracked the Requiem's slow approach through the outer edges of their territory. Reports came in, describing the ship's size, roughly comparable to a mid-sized Dominion cruiser, though its design was unlike anything in Dominion records. Sensor scans could not fully penetrate its outer hull, which puzzled Dominion engineers greatly. Something about the ship's shielding was actively deflecting deeper scans, though not in a way that seemed hostile. It simply refused to reveal its full details. "This is not a primitive design," one Dominion engineer reported to Cathal. "Their shielding technology reflects our scans in patterns we don't fully understand. Either their science is more advanced than we assumed, or this ship carries something they don't want us to see." Cathal considered this report carefully. It was the first sign that the human species might not be as simple as first assumed. Meanwhile, aboard the Requiem, the crew grew closer to their destination with each passing day. On the 22nd day, long-range sensors finally detected the edge of the Dominion fleet, still several days away but growing more visible with each hour. Commander Osei brought the reading to Captain Rhodes personally. 412 ships confirmed, Captain, he said. Spread across the Vale Station and surrounding space. Our estimates on their firepower suggest a fleet capable of destroying an entire star system, if given enough time. Rhodes studied the numbers without visible reaction. "And our Aegis readings?" "Fully operational," said Dr. Takahashi, standing nearby. "The shield array has never been tested against a force this size, but the simulations remain consistent. If our models hold, the Requiem should be able to withstand significant sustained fire, far beyond what a ship of our size would normally survive." "Should," Rhodes repeated quietly. "There are no guarantees with something never tested in real combat," Takahashi admitted, "but the science is sound." Rhodes turned to face her full bridge crew, who had gathered to hear the update. "We knew what we were flying into when we left Earth. Nothing about that has changed. We continue forward, exactly as planned." The following days passed with growing tension, as the Requiem closed the final distance to the Vale. Crew members spoke less during meals. Sleep came harder for many. Yet nobody asked to turn back, and nobody wavered in their duties. Captain Rhodes made a point of walking through the ship each day, speaking with crew members at every station, keeping morale steady through simple presence and calm words. On the 29th day, the Requiem entered final approach toward the Vale Station. Dominion sensors locked onto the ship immediately, and within the command tower, Grand Speaker Cathal and Fleet Marshal Corrin watched the single human vessel appear on their main view screen, growing larger as it approached. The bridge of the Vale Station fell into an uneasy silence. 412 Dominion warships surrounded the station in a massive formation, engines glowing, weapons ready, and drifting toward them, alone, unafraid, and without a single escort, came one human battleship. "They actually came," Vesa Threll said quietly, disbelief clear in her voice. "Alone." Fleet Marshal Corrin's earlier amusement had faded into something closer to unease, though he tried not to show it. No species he had ever encountered had done something like this. Whether it was foolishness or confidence, he could not yet tell. Grand Speaker Cathal leaned forward in his seat, eyes fixed on the small human ship growing steadily on the view screen. "Open a channel," he said. "It's time we find out exactly what kind of species sends one ship to speak with an empire." Aboard the Requiem, Captain Rhodes stood at the center of her bridge as the massive Dominion fleet came fully into view outside the viewport. Ship after ship stretched across the darkness of space. More warships than most humans had ever seen gathered in one place. For a brief moment, even the most disciplined members of the crew felt the full, staggering weight of what they were facing. Rhodes took a slow breath, steadying herself before speaking. "Hold position," she ordered. "Let them come to us." The Requiem stopped its forward motion, hovering alone before the largest gathering of alien warships humanity had ever encountered. On the bridge's main comm system, a soft alert chimed, signaling an incoming transmission from the Dominion fleet. The negotiation the entire galaxy would soon hear about was about to begin. The transmission request blinked steadily on the Requiem's main comm panel. Captain Ava Rhodes stood tall at the center of her bridge, hands clasped behind her back, eyes fixed on the massive Dominion fleet filling the view screen before her. Behind her, the bridge crew waited in silence, every station manned, every system ready. "Accept the channel," Rhodes said. The main screen shifted from the star field to a live image of the Vale Station's command tower. Grand Speaker Cathal appeared first, seated in a high-backed chair, his sharp eyes studying the human captain carefully. Beside him stood Fleet Marshal Draeth Corin, arms crossed, his large frame radiating quiet aggression even through the screen. "You are the commander of this vessel," Cathal said, his translated voice calm and measured. "I am Captain Ava Rhodes of the United Earth Fleet," Rhodes replied. "I speak for the people of Earth." "One ship," Cathal said, studying her closely. "We expected a delegation, perhaps an honor guard. Instead, your species sends one vessel to answer the demands of an empire that spans dozens of star systems. Explain this to me, Captain. Is this bravery, or is this ignorance?" Rhodes did not hesitate. "It's neither. It's a message. We do not believe the size of a fleet decides the truth of a matter. If your empire has real questions about our presence near Haven, then those questions can be answered by one ship as easily as by 100. Fleet Marshal Corin let out a low growl, stepping closer to the screen. "You misunderstand your position, Captain. You are not here to negotiate as equals. You are here because our empire chose to allow your species one chance to explain itself before we take what we require by force." "Then let's discuss what you require," Rhodes said evenly, refusing to be shaken by his tone. Cathal raised a hand, silencing Corin before he could continue. "The terms are simple, Captain. Your colony on the world you call Haven sits within space claimed by the Skarn Dominion for over 3 centuries. You will withdraw your people from that world within one standard cycle. In addition, the Dominion requires access to your species' shielding technology, which our scans suggest may be more advanced than expected. Comply with these terms, and your species may continue to exist within limited, approved territory." The bridge crew of the Requiem remained silent, but many exchanged quiet glances. The demand was clear: total submission. "And if we refuse?" Rhodes asked. Cathal's expression did not change. "Then the fleet behind me will ensure your compliance through other means." Rhodes let the silence stretch for a long moment before answering. "Grand Speaker, I did not come here to hand over our people's home, and I did not come here to hand over technology that took generations to build. Haven belongs to the people who live there. That will not change today." Corin's patience broke first. "You dare refuse the Dominion, alone, surrounded by our fleet?" "I'm not alone," Rhodes said calmly. "I represent every person on Earth and every colony we've built. That is not a small number, Fleet Marshal, even if it fits inside one ship today." For a moment, Cathal studied the human captain with something close to genuine curiosity. In 300 years of Dominion expansion, he had negotiated with dozens of species. Most had folded quickly, once faced with the size of the Dominion fleet. A rare few had fought back with desperate, doomed resistance. He had never encountered a species that responded with calm, steady refusal, especially not while facing odds like these. "You understand," Cathal said slowly, "that this fleet alone could destroy your vessel within moments, should I give the order." "I understand that you could try," Rhodes said. "I also understand that if you do, you'll learn something about my species that a peaceful negotiation would never have shown you." The comment hung in the air. Corin's eyes narrowed, clearly reading it as a threat, though Rhodes had said nothing about weapons or violence directly. Cathal, however, caught something else in her words, a quiet confidence that did not match a species bluffing from a position of weakness. "Give us time to consider your position, Captain," Cathal said finally. "We will resume this discussion shortly." The transmission cut, returning the bridge screen to the star field and the looming Dominion fleet. Rhodes exhaled slowly, allowing herself a brief moment of tension release before straightening again. "Report," she said. "No hostile movement from the fleet," said the tactical officer. "They're holding position, same as us." "Good," Rhodes said. "Takahashi, status on the Aegis system?" "Fully charged and stable," Dr. Takahashi replied from her station. "If they test us, we're ready." Commander Osei stepped closer to Rhodes, lowering his voice slightly. "Captain, do you think they'll actually attack?" Rhodes considered the question carefully. "I think Corin wants to. I think Cathal is smarter than that, at least for now. But we should prepare for either outcome." Back aboard the Vale station, the command tower had fallen into a tense debate. Corin paced back and forth, clearly agitated. "This is an insult," he said. "One ship refuses the demands of an empire, and we simply allow it to sail away unharmed?" Every species watching this encounter through the trade networks will see weakness in us if we do nothing. And if we destroy that ship and discover afterward that their species has more like it, ready to respond in force, what then? Cathal asked. We know almost nothing about their true capabilities. Our scans could not fully penetrate their shielding. That alone should give you pause, Fleet Marshal. A trick, Corrin said dismissively. Advanced shielding does not win wars. Numbers win wars. And we have the numbers. Vesa Threll, standing nearby, spoke up carefully. Grand Speaker, my analysis team has been studying the ship's design since it entered our system. There are irregularities, weapon signatures we don't recognize, power readings that don't match anything in our records. I would recommend caution before any direct confrontation. Cathal nodded slowly, appreciating her caution more than Corrin's aggression. Then we proceed carefully. I will speak with the human captain once more. Perhaps a demonstration of our strength will be enough to bring her terms closer to reason, without requiring direct conflict. Corrin scoffed but said nothing further, clearly unhappy with the decision. An hour later, the transmission reopened between the Vale station and the Requiem. This time, Cathal's tone carried a harder edge. Captain Rhodes, he said. Perhaps a demonstration will help clarify your position. On the Requiem's view screen, a portion of the Dominion fleet began to move, dozens of warships shifting into a tighter, more aggressive formation, surrounding the lone human vessel. Weapon systems along their hulls glowed to life, a clear and unmistakable show of force. On the bridge of the Requiem, several younger crew members tensed visibly. Ensign Malhotra's hands tightened on her console, though she kept her eyes steady on her readings. Hold steady, Rhodes said calmly, her voice carrying through the bridge without a hint of fear. Do not respond, unless I give the order. The Dominion ships continued closing in, surrounding the Requiem in a tightening ring, their weapon arrays fully charged and visible, even through the ship's viewport. It was, without question, an intimidation display, meant to force a human surrender through pure fear. Rhodes stared calmly into the camera, addressing Cathal directly. Grand Speaker, if this is meant to frighten me into abandoning Haven, I should tell you now, it won't work. My people did not send me here to be intimidated. We sent me here because we are not afraid, and this display changes nothing about that. Cathal studied her closely, searching for any sign of the fear he expected to see. He found none. Whether it was true courage or a very convincing performance, he could not yet be certain. You are either the bravest commander I have encountered, Cathal said slowly, or the most foolish. Time will tell which, Captain Rhodes. Before Rhodes could respond, an alert flashed suddenly across the Requiem's tactical display. One of the Dominion warships, without any visible order from the command tower, had broken formation and was moving directly toward the Requiem at aggressive speed, its weapons charging far beyond standard display levels. Captain, the tactical officer called out. Unauthorized weapons charge detected. Incoming vessel bearing directly on our position. On the Vale station, Cathal's expression shifted to alarm as he turned toward his own tactical readouts. Identify that ship. It's Commander Threll's second wing, an aide reported urgently. They're moving independently, no orders given from this station. Fleet Marshal Corrin's jaw tightened, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. Whether by his hidden order, or by the impatience of an overzealous commander, one thing had become suddenly, dangerously clear. Someone within the Dominion fleet had decided not to wait for Cathal's careful diplomacy any longer. The lone Dominion warship bore down on the Requiem, weapons fully charged, closing the final distance in seconds. Aboard the human ship, Captain Rhodes's calm expression hardened into something far more focused. All hands, she said, her voice steady despite the danger closing in. Prepare for contact. The rogue Dominion warship closed the final distance in seconds, its weapon arrays glowing bright with charged energy. On the bridge of the Requiem, alarms chimed steadily as the tactical display marked the incoming threat in sharp red lines. Range, 10,000 kilometers and closing, the tactical officer called out. Weapons fully charged. They're not slowing down, Captain. Captain Ava Rhodes stood firm at the center of the bridge, her eyes fixed on the screen. Takahashi, Aegis status. Fully active, Dr. Ren, Takahashi replied, her fingers moving quickly across her console. Shield array is ready to absorb direct impact. Malhotra, do not fire unless I give the order, Rhodes said. We do not throw the first strike. Ensign Priya Malhotra's hands trembled slightly over her weapons console, but her voice remained steady. Understood, Captain. Holding fire. The Dominion ship opened fire without warning. A brilliant beam of energy shot across the space between the two vessels, striking the Requiem's forward shields directly. The bridge shook slightly from the impact, lights flickering for a brief second before stabilizing. Shields holding at 98%, Takahashi reported, her voice carrying a note of quiet amazement. Barely a scratch. On the Vale station, Grand Speaker Cathal watched the exchange with growing alarm. Order that ship to stand down immediately. They're not responding to hails, an aide reported. Commander Threll's wing is acting independently. Fleet Marshal Corrin stepped forward, his expression unreadable, though a faint gleam of satisfaction flickered in his eyes. Whether he had quietly encouraged this attack or not, he showed no urgency to stop it. Corrin, Cathal snapped, call off your officer, now, before this becomes something we cannot undo. It seems the order has already been given, Grand Speaker, Corrin said calmly. Perhaps it is best to let this play out. We will finally see what that ship is truly capable of. Cathal's eyes narrowed at Corrin's thinly veiled defiance, but before he could respond further, the rogue Dominion ship fired a second, more powerful blast, directly at the Requiem. Aboard the human vessel, the bridge shook harder this time, though the ship's systems remained steady. Shields at 91%, Takahashi reported. Their weapons are strong, but our shield regeneration is keeping pace. Rhodes turned to her weapons officer, Malhotra. Target their weapon arrays only. Disable, do not destroy. Targeting locked, Malhotra confirmed. Her nerves had steadied now, that action had replaced waiting. Ready on your order. Fire, Rhodes said. A single, precise beam of energy shot from the Requiem's forward weapon array, striking the Dominion ship's primary weapon systems directly. The impact was small compared to the size of the enemy vessel, but devastatingly accurate. The Dominion ship's weapon array erupted in a shower of sparks, its main cannons falling dark and silent. On the Vale station, sensor officers stared at their readouts in stunned silence. Their weapon just disabled our entire forward array with a single shot, one officer said, disbelief clear in his voice. No hull damage, no casualties reported aboard. They didn't destroy the ship, they disarmed it. Corrin's confident expression faltered slightly for the first time. That is not possible with weapons of that ship's size. And yet it happened, Cathal said quietly, watching the display with a mixture of alarm and fascination. Back aboard the Requiem, the disabled Dominion ship drifted silently, its weapons dark, its crew undoubtedly shaken but alive. Rhodes allowed herself the smallest breath of relief before turning back to her crew. Status of the rest of the fleet? She asked. Holding position, the tactical officer reported. No further movement detected. Rhodes opened a channel back to the Vale station. Cathal's image reappeared on the main screen, his expression noticeably more guarded than before. Grand Speaker, Rhodes said, her voice calm despite the tension of the moment. I want to be clear about what just happened. Your officer attacked my ship without provocation, during an active negotiation. I responded by disabling their weapons, nothing more. No lives were lost. That was a choice, not a limitation. Cathal studied her carefully, understanding the deeper meaning behind her words immediately. She had shown restraint, not weakness. A ship capable of disabling a Dominion warship's weapons with a single precise shot could easily have destroyed it outright, and everyone watching understood that clearly. You could have killed everyone aboard that vessel, Cathal said slowly. I could have, Rhodes agreed. I chose not to. That should tell you something about my species, Grand Speaker, if the fleet surrounding my ship hasn't already. Fleet Marshal Corrin stepped closer to the screen, his composure cracking slightly under the weight of what he had just witnessed. One ship does not decide the outcome of this encounter, Captain. My fleet remains untouched. 400 warships still surround you. They do, Rhodes said, and every one of them is welcome to test what just happened to your officer's ship. But I suspect, Fleet Marshal, that you already understand how that would end. The bridge of the Vale station fell into uneasy silence. Corrin's jaw tightened, clearly wrestling with pride, and the sudden uncertainty now clouding his confidence. Commander Vesa Threll stepped forward hesitantly, addressing Cathal directly. Grand Speaker, my analysis of that weapon signature suggests something troubling. That shot was calculated with impossible precision, adjusted mid-flight to strike only the weapon systems without touching the hull's structural integrity. That is not simple weapons technology. That is a species with an understanding of energy weapons far beyond what our records suggest they should possess. Cathal absorbed this information carefully, his mind racing through the implications. A species that had only recently begun exploring beyond its home system should not possess technology capable of such precise, restrained destruction. Something about humanity's development did not match the expectations built from centuries of dominion conquest over lesser species. Captain Rhodes, Cathal said slowly, choosing his next words with obvious care, it appears there is more to your species than my earlier assumptions allowed. I will admit, this changes the nature of our discussion. I'm glad to hear that, Rhodes said, because my terms have not changed. Haven remains under human protection. Our technology remains our own, and any future negotiations between our species will happen as equals, not as conqueror and conquered. Corin could not stay silent any longer. You ask for equality after showing us one weapon. From one ship? The Dominion has conquered dozens of species, far stronger than what you've shown us today. Then perhaps, Rhodes said calmly, it's worth asking why none of those species sent just one ship. The comment landed heavily across the command tower. Even Cathal, normally unreadable, allowed a small flicker of surprise to cross his face. It was, in its own quiet way, the most dangerous implication of the entire encounter. If a single human ship could stand against an intimidation display from 400 Dominion warships and walk away unscathed while disabling an attacker with careful precision, what might a full human fleet be capable of, should the Dominion push humanity toward all-out war? Corin opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, a soft alert chimed across the Vale Station's command deck. A new report was coming in, this time from deep within Dominion territory, far from the standoff unfolding at the Vale. An aide rushed forward, speaking urgently to Cathal. Grand Speaker, we're receiving reports from our monitoring stations near the outer trade routes. Word of this encounter has already spread. Other species along our border territories are asking questions. Some are requesting updated intelligence on the Dominion's true strength. Cathal closed his eyes briefly, understanding immediately the deeper danger of the situation. It was no longer simply about one human ship. It was about how this encounter, regardless of its outcome, would be seen and discussed across the wider galaxy. An empire built on fear and overwhelming numbers could not afford even a single crack in that image, and today, in full view of the surrounding systems, that crack had already begun to form. Order the fleet to stand down completely, Cathal said firmly. No further hostile action without my direct authorization. Corin's expression darkened with barely restrained frustration, but he said nothing further, recognizing the shift in authority now clearly favoring Cathal's more careful approach. Aboard the Requiem, Captain Rhodes watched the Dominion fleet begin to pull back into a less aggressive formation, weapon systems powering down across dozens of visible ships. They're standing down, the tactical officer confirmed. Fleet formation returning to standard patrol positions. Rhodes allowed herself a small, quiet breath, though she did not let her guard fully lower. Good. Takahashi. Keep the Aegis system fully charged. This isn't over yet. Understood, Captain, Takahashi replied. On the main screen, Cathal's image remained, his expression now carrying something closer to genuine curiosity than the earlier cold authority. Captain Rhodes, it seems we have both learned something today that neither of us expected. It seems that way, Rhodes agreed. I will need time to properly reconsider the terms of this negotiation, Cathal said. Time, and likely consultation beyond this station. Take the time you need, Grand Speaker, Rhodes said. But understand this, my ship isn't going anywhere until this is settled fairly. And if word is already spreading about what happened here today, I suspect you'll want that settlement to reflect well on the Dominion's reputation, not poorly. Cathal studied her for a long moment before responding. You are a very unusual negotiator, Captain. I'm just doing my job, Rhodes said simply. The transmission ended, leaving the Requiem hovering quietly once more, before the massive, now visibly hesitant Dominion fleet. Aboard the bridge, the crew allowed themselves a small collective release of tension, though nobody fully relaxed. The true outcome of the day's events, and what it would mean for humanity's future among the stars, remained far from decided. Far across Dominion space, and soon across dozens of neighboring systems, the story of a single human battleship standing unmoved before an empire's fleet had already begun to spread. And with every retelling, it grew larger, stranger, and far more difficult for the scarred Dominion to control. 3 days passed before the Vale Station reopened formal talks with the Requiem. Within that time, Captain Ava Rhodes kept her crew on full alert, unwilling to let her guard down, despite the Dominion fleet's quieter posture. The ship remained alone, still surrounded by hundreds of alien warships, but the atmosphere of the standoff had shifted noticeably. No further aggressive moves came from the fleet. No more test attacks. Only careful, watchful silence. Inside the Vale Station, the mood among the Dominion leadership had shifted just as much, though for very different reasons. Grand Speaker Cathal had spent those 3 days doing something he rarely needed to do during Dominion negotiations, consulting with higher authorities. Using the station's long-range communication array, he sent detailed reports back to the Dominion's ruling council, explaining exactly what had happened during the failed intimidation attempt and the single, devastating demonstration of human weapons technology that followed. The council's response came back slower than usual, a sign in itself that the matter was being taken seriously at the highest levels of Dominion leadership. Fleet Marshal Draeth Corin, meanwhile, grew increasingly restless. His authority had weakened considerably since the failed attack, and whispers among his own officers suggested growing doubt about his judgment. Commander Vessa Threll, whose detailed analysis of the Requiem's weapon signature had proven both accurate and troubling, found her own standing rising in contrast to Corin's. "The Council has responded," Cathal announced to his senior officers on the 3rd day, standing before the main display in the command tower. "They have authorized a full diplomatic resolution, provided the humans agree to reasonable terms regarding shared border space." Corin's expression darkened. "Reasonable terms? We came here to claim haven, not to share space with a species we know almost nothing about. We came here believing this species could be easily conquered, like the others before them," Cathal corrected sharply. "That belief nearly cost us dearly 3 days ago. The Council has decided, wisely, that further aggression against a species capable of what we witnessed is not in the Dominion's best interest, especially not while word of this encounter continues spreading across neighboring systems." Corin said nothing further, though his frustration remained clearly visible. Cathal reopened communications with the Requiem shortly after, requesting a final round of negotiations. Captain Rhodes accepted immediately, standing once more at the center of her bridge, as Cathal's image appeared on the main screen. "Captain Rhodes," Cathal began, his tone noticeably more measured than during their earlier exchanges. "The Dominion Council has reviewed the events of the past several days. We are prepared to offer revised terms." "I'm listening," Rhodes said. "Haven will remain under human control," Cathal said. "The Dominion withdraws all claims to that system. In exchange, we ask only for a formal agreement, establishing clear borders between our territories, along with an open channel for future diplomatic contact between our species." Rhodes considered the offer carefully. It was, by any measure, a complete reversal from the original demands. No surrender of Haven. No demand for human technology, simply a request for peaceful borders and future communication. "And the technology demand?" she asked. "Withdrawn," Cathal said simply. "It seems clear now that such a request would have been poorly considered, given what we now understand about your capabilities." Rhodes allowed herself a small, measured nod. "These terms are acceptable, Grand Speaker. I'll need to confirm final approval from Earth's Council, but I see no reason they would object to peaceful borders and open communication." "Then we have an understanding," Cathal said. Before ending the transmission, Cathal paused, studying Rhodes with an expression that carried something close to genuine respect. "Captain, may I ask you something, outside the formal terms of this negotiation?" "Go ahead," Rhodes said. "Why send one ship?" Cathal asked. "Truly, your species could have sent a larger fleet, could have matched our numbers more closely, even if not fully." Why risk everything on a single vessel? Rhodes considered the question for a moment before answering honestly. Because we didn't want to start this relationship by trying to match your strength. We wanted to show you something different, that strength isn't only measured by numbers. It's measured by what you're willing to stand behind, even when the numbers aren't in your favor. Cathal studied her words carefully, clearly turning them over in his mind. An unusual philosophy for a species so young among the stars. Maybe, Rhodes said. But it got us a fair negotiation instead of a war. I'd call that a success. The transmission ended shortly after, and word of the settlement spread quickly, first through the Requiem's crew, and soon afterward, across the wider Dominion fleet and beyond. Within hours, the full story of the encounter, the lone human ship, the failed attack, the precise and restrained response, and the eventual peaceful settlement, had already begun circulating far beyond Dominion borders, carried by merchant ships and travelers passing through the region's busy trade routes. The Requiem remained at the Vale for 2 more days, finalizing the details of the agreement alongside official Earth representatives, who arrived via a small diplomatic shuttle sent from the nearest human colony. When the formal treaty was signed, Captain Rhodes stood beside Grand Speaker Cathal for the ceremony, the massive Dominion fleet still visible in the background, though its once threatening presence now felt more like a formality than a danger. As the Requiem finally turned to make its long journey back toward Earth, the crew allowed themselves, for the first time in weeks, a genuine sense of relief. In the ship's mess hall that evening, Ensign Priya Malhotra sat with Commander Osei and a few other officers, sharing a rare, relaxed meal. "Still can't believe we actually pulled it off," Malhotra said, shaking her head slightly. "The captain never doubted it," Osei said. "Not once, as far as I could tell." "Neither did the ship," added Dr. Takahashi, joining the table. "Every simulation held true, exactly as designed." "Still feels like luck, a little," Malhotra admitted. Osei shook his head. "Luck doesn't disable a warship's weapons with a single precise shot, Ensign. That was skill, and a lot of careful planning. Don't sell yourself short." "You made that shot." Malhotra smiled quietly, allowing herself to feel proud of the moment for the first time since it happened. Word of the encounter reached Earth well before the Requiem's return, carried swiftly by long-range communication relays. When Captain Rhodes and her crew finally arrived back in Earth's orbit 30 days later, they were greeted not with quiet acknowledgement, but with celebration. Millions watched the ship's return live, and for the first time since the crisis began, the full weight of what humanity had accomplished settled clearly across the public consciousness. In the days that followed, other species from beyond Dominion space, having heard the story through trade routes and traveling merchants, began sending their own quiet inquiries toward Earth. Some curious, some cautious, all eager to understand more about this new species that had faced down an empire's fleet with a single ship and returned home victorious, without firing more than one shot in anger. General Marcus Hale, standing before the United Earth Council weeks later, summarized the outcome simply. "We sent one ship to answer a threat," he said, "and in doing so, we didn't just protect Haven. We told the galaxy exactly who we are, and exactly what kind of answer they'll receive if they ever test us again." Director Amara Chen, whose original idea had set the entire mission into motion, allowed herself a rare, quiet smile from her seat at the council table. Far across the stars, within the Dominion's ruling halls, Grand Speaker Cathal found himself reflecting often on his conversation with Captain Rhodes. The Dominion had built its power for centuries on fear and overwhelming numbers, conquering species that folded quickly before superior force. Humanity had shown, through calm resolve and a single well-placed shot, that such an approach would not work against every species they encountered. The Skarn Dominion had sent a fleet of 400 warships expecting to receive humanity's surrender. Instead, they received something else entirely, a quiet, steady answer from a single battleship that never needed to raise its voice to be heard clearly across the stars. And though the Dominion had come expecting an answer, written in fear and submission, what they truly received was something they never got the chance to fully understand until it was already standing before them, unshaken and undefeated. The aliens had sent their demand expecting a predictable response. They never got the answer they expected at all.